Breaking continuity today because my hair is in braids and I don't want to take it out. Also, sorry if I sound weird, I am sick. They summon the ferryman of the river, who is very displeased to see them, as is per usual in hell, but after a little bit of sweet talking, Virgil manages to convince him that you should totally let us on and take us across. During this ride, a sinner just climbs out of the marsh and starts holding on to the boat and is like, "Hey Dante, what are you doing here?" Dante kind of looks at him and just says, "Oh, just passing through, you foul sinner." That's what the book says. The sinner, who is named Filippio Argenti, begins to weep, and Dante says to him, "May you weep and wail to all eternity, for I know you, hell dog, filthy as you are." Which is a very stark contrast from the Dante we saw in the last part, where he was passing out multiple times because he can't handle anything. After this, Virgil takes the butt of his staff and puts it on the man's forehead and kind of just pushes him back into the marsh. He then turns to console Dante, who has come down from his power trip and is now frightened again. Meanwhile, in the background, the other sinners in the marsh begin dogpiling Filippio and are just beating him and biting him, and it's this whole thing because hell. This sinner in particular, Filippio Argenti, was a member of the Adamari family, who were political enemies to Dante. He was likely included in this canto because Dante wanted to insult him or the family, or both. As they begin to approach the shore, Dante comments on the red mosques in the distance. This is a commentary about how Islam, and really any religion that isn't Catholicism, is a scourge on the earth and is the devil's heresy and all this crazy stuff that Europeans at the time believed. They land on the shore and the ferryman just begins to shout at them until they get off the boat. They walk inland, beginning to approach a massive gate, but as they get closer and closer, a great deal of spirits and wraiths and sinners begin to swarm the poets and dissuade them from entering. Virgil tells Dante, "Stay here," and walks off with all of these souls following. After some talking, he convinces them to just bug off and let them through. This ginormous gate in question is the gate to the city of Dis, which is the inner circles of hell. Hell is divided in half by these city walls, circle 1 through 4, and outer hell, and circles 5 through 9, the city of Dis. They walk up to the gate, and even Virgil is becoming visibly nervous at this point. Suddenly, on top of a nearby spire, the three Furies materialize and begin to scream and shout and tear at their skin and their breasts, screaming and wailing for Medusa. The three Furies are characters from medieval mythology who were the goddesses of vengeance. Virgil, now fully expecting Medusa to show up, tells Dante to cover his eyes and do not uncover them until I tell you to. Suddenly, a blindingly bright flash of light happens, and an angel appears and starts to berate the three Furies, to which they retreat, and the angel opens the gate, which is wildly convenient for Dante. The angel disappears, and the two proceed through the gate, and Dante asks, "Hey, who's the next group of sinners we're seeing in hell, because this is a tourist attraction now." Virgil tells him that it's the heretics, so cult leaders, all of their followers, people who believed in science, people who believe nothing will happen after death, and anyone who isn't Catholic. So this is a huge catch-all. They cross the threshold and begin to traverse the city, staying against one of the interior walls so they don't get lost. As they walk, they pass by countless stone tombs with flames coming out. Dante asks if he can walk up to one to get a closer look, and Virgil goes, "Yeah, sure, whatever." As he does, a voice comes from behind him. "O Tuscan, who go living through this place, speaking so decorously, may it please you to pause a moment on your way, for by the grace of that high speech in which I hear your birth, I know you for a son of that noble city which perhaps I vexed too much in my time on earth." Virgil recognizes this man as Farinata, a prominent yet very arrogant nobleman from Florence. He asks Dante, "Hey Dante, do you know my son?" And Dante says, "Oh yeah, no, he was a great guy and he was really nice." And Farinata notices this past tense and realizes that his son is dead, to which he sighs and lies back down into his burning grave, which was a really weirdly human moment in this story. Dante's walking around passing out, describing these horrors beyond man, and then all of a sudden it just cuts to this short scene of a man who is condemned to burn in a coffin forever, whose only care is about his son. With that, Dante and Virgil just leave. As they leave, Virgil kind of just mentions offhand that King Frederick II and Cardinal Ubaldini are down here. The story in the book says King Frederick, but historian consensus is that this was supposed to be Emperor Frederick II, often thought of as being lustful and greedy and Obviously, this was bad for his place of power, and he was a heretic, and blah blah blah, he's in hell. And Cardinal Ottavino degli Ubaldini was greedy in life and corrupt in his power as a cardinal. He is known to Dante for saying that if I have a soul, I have lost it to greed. And Dante probably would have thought that this is heresy, so he's in hell too. I'm going to take a second here to pause and point out that Dante has a terrible habit of mentioning details and never elaborating on them. It's likely that he did this because he didn't have anywhere else to fit his political opinions, so he kind of just was like, oh yeah, I guess this is a good place to mention that King Frederick is down in hell, by the way. Interesting from a historical perspective, but it makes reading this really difficult because you have literally no clue what details are going to be important later and which ones are just offhand comments. I digress. The poets continue on towards the seventh circle, and as they round the corner, an overpowering stench assaults their noses, and they recoil back behind this quarter to hide from it. At this point, the story mentions that nearby is a special burning coffin, inscribed with, I guard Anastasius, once Pope, he whom Fontanus led from the straight road. Guess if this is ever mentioned again. Pope Anastasius II was likely not the person that Dante intended to include, because Pope Anastasius II did not know Fontanus, who was a deacon of Thessalonica. This was most likely intended to be Emperor Anastasius I, who was persuaded by Fontanus to accept heresy, and I say that with a lot of quotation marks. Virgil sits down and says we should wait here so we can get used to the smell. In the meantime, Virgil explains that malice is the sin that God hates the most, as it actively seeks to harm others, and that everything past where they are now is punishment for people who have committed violence and fraud. Virgil then spends about 2 pages, unnecessarily, rambling about how man is incontinent and we were made to forage and not industrialize and build big cities like Rome. This was written in the 1300s, so I think that if Virgil saw, like, Tokyo, he would go into cardiac arrest. Even though this isn't Virgil's opinion, this is Dante's opinion that he is projecting onto Virgil for the sake of the narrative. So anyway, we're gonna leave off there and go to the next video.